everyone, to today's episode. I'm so excited you are here. I have a super special guest for you today for one of our soul chats. His name is Peter Roth. I met Peter through my PR agent that I ended up doing an interview with. And the moment I read about Peter, the moment I checked out his website, I was like, ooh, I really, really need to talk to this man. He's going to be 82 years old in October of 2024. He is teaching classes, doing intuitive work, doing past life regressions, doing human design and card readings. He's just a really fascinating person. And in this interview, we are going to talk about human design. He actually pulls up my chart and breaks down the chart as well, which I have had different chart readings for human design throughout the years, and I find human design very, very fascinating. But some of the things he shared with me, I have not had other readers share with me, and I have had some really in-depth readings. So it was really cool finding out some new things on the human design chart that I didn't know about, which was really, really neat. He also talks about cards. And when he's talking about cards, he's not talking about tarot. He's not talking about oracle cards. He's talking about playing cards, but from a spiritual perspective. And I think this is super fascinating. It explains the difference between tarot and playing cards. And when he says playing cards, he's a source cards practitioner, which is the original map of the structure of life. In his early life, Peter was a third-degree black belt in karate and was a co-founder of the New York City Marathon. He lives in New York City with his wife of 43 years. And he has 2 sons and 3 grandchildren. He's just a really beautiful soul. Like, I'm really excited for you guys to jump into this. So without further ado, let's jump into this soul chat interview with Peter Roth. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited for this soul chat interview with Peter Roth. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Hi, Amy. Just great. I'm so happy to be talking with you.
I'm so excited you are here. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Like, you've been in the spiritual journeying for quite some time. How did you enter it, and how are you enjoying it now in your older years?
Well, I love it. And I entered it the day I was born because I had a near-death experience. I had to be resuscitated, and I got to experience the other side. And when we're that close to birth, we're very aware. And there's there's a woman, name is PMH Water. Anyway, she wrote a book. She researched so many adults who knew that they had to be resuscitated as children, assuming they all had near-death experiences. And they were all unique people because they'd seen the other side. And they don't remember the near-death experience, but having it changed them. And
Yeah.
I can see how it must have changed me because I've always been kind of out there. And so, and then when I was 17, my father suddenly died. And I was driven to kind of follow his spirit, to want to know where he went and how I could find him and see him again. And so all of a sudden I was on a spiritual path and studied college. I took, courses in Buddhism, whatever, I was on the path, and I didn't take it seriously as a life career. I just knew I needed answers. And so
I think that's where it starts for a lot of people. They just want answers.
yeah. And then I studied body work. I studied applied kinesiology for many years and got so adept at helping people And I was part of a big group. I was a leader, actually, of a large group that assembled in Central Park every Sunday morning for some years, some hundreds of people who were brought there by a charismatic guy who had a daily radio show in New York. Still, well, I don't know if he still has it. He's on the internet anyway with the radio show. But this is back um, in the 70s, and so I used to be actually a guest on his show, and even hosted occasionally when he'd go away. But he had me debating with people who were experts at different things, and I was able to give them answers and debate with them about subject matter I wasn't familiar with, and I didn't understand how I knew all of that. And it turns out that it was all intuitive. It was just information would come through, and actually over the years there's been some scientists who I was connected with who I was able to give them information that they needed that I didn't even know what I was talking about.
It's neat that they were open and interested in it too by receiving it in that way.
But yeah, but that's the package. They knew they needed this information. So when I said I have some information that they need, they understood they better listen.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
So I didn't understand why, how did I know so much? And then in I guess it was in the 70s also, I traveled around the country to write a book about running. I'm very entrenched in the running world. I'm one of the co-founders of the New York Marathon, and there are many aspects of running that I've had an impact in the world. And so at one point I was researching a book on where to run in 125 American cities. Couldn't get to all of them, but I did get to quite a few. And then when I was writing the book, every morning I'd wake up to write another chapter, another city. And somehow I knew a lot about it. I didn't understand how I had it all figured out. But I guess in my sleep or something, all the information was poured into me and I just kind of knew what to do. And when the book came out, there were people calling me from different cities saying, how did you know this? How did you know that? And I said, well, I don't know. I just knew it. And so that book came out in the late 70s. And then, so I've been very surprisingly intuitive in ways that I just didn't understand myself. Why do I know these things? And so I was able to read into people's bodies because I had studied body work. I'd studied applied kinesiology for some years, and I was so good at helping people, but I wasn't licensed in anything. And I had a family, and I couldn't go back to school to be licensed. So I said, well, I've always been so spiritual. Why don't I just kind of try to turn this into something spiritual and see? And all of a sudden, I could read people's bodies remotely. I could do chiropractic adjustments on the telephone with people. And it was crazy how everything flooded in from the universe in so many different ways. And my biggest questions, I guess, had to do with how does the universe work? What is going on? Where does all this information come from? How do we know what to do next if we're guided by spirit? And it was amazing that it just kept growing and growing, and I was just in wonder so much about these gifts that I seem to have. And so I started a school, a healing school, in 1997. And we've had weekly classes ever since, except for summer breaks. And even teaching classes, I just sit down with a lot of students And in those early days, because I was on the radio a lot, et cetera, I had a big clientele, I had a big student body, and I just let it flow. Students would come in. I had it in my house for some years, and I had a big living room, and I'd have like 20 students, and I wouldn't have an agenda. I would just ask for guidance and be able to teach a class for a couple hours, and
I love.
it was really far out, and I didn't know how to deal with it other than appreciate it. Because we're going to talk about what we're designed for, and we'll talk about the human design system. Because in the human design system, I know your chart will talk about what that all means, but you're born to be a leader. You're a number 3 in well, human design, and that's the number of leadership of the 6 numbers, because it's based on Chinese hexagrams. So those 6, the three is leadership, and that makes sense. You are, and I'm not. The 3, it's great if I could be a 3, but I'm not. I'm not a 4, which is master, being a master and have devotees, and so you're a leader and have followers. So just people recognize that you know so much, and they people love to follow you, and but master is much more personal, and not necessarily having classes, just being integrated with people through their mastery.
For anybody that doesn't know, what is human design?
Human design is a system that was brought in, channeled into a man living in Ibiza, Spain in 1987. A voice spoke to him and said, take notes. And the voice spoke to him for 8 days and delivered this crazy system that is so amazingly profound. And it took him 5 years to learn how to present it to the public. And it's based on our birth date, time, and place. So it's based on where the planets are in the sky. And instead of in astrology having houses and planets around the sky, it has the hexagrams, the 64 hexagrams of the Chinese I Ching. And he was shown how to surround the sky with them. So when you know where your planets are, you know which particular hexagrams are yours. And then he was given the understanding that not only is our birth date important, but 88 and a half days before we were born, the unconscious half of our personality clicks in. And that's how we know half of you. And it's not so unconscious. It's just kind of between the front burner and the back burner.
Yeah, that's what burner you're using.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
in human design, we have the conscious part of our chart, and then we have the unconscious part of our chart. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we have the front burner, back burner. They're all in play all the time.
Yeah.
They're all accurate. I've done thousands of chart readings because I studied with the original guy. I took a lot of classes with him 22 years ago.
I find human design extremely fascinating.
Yeah,
And I think it's a really neat thing. What do you tell someone because I know you need to know your birthday, you need to know where you were born. What about the birth time? Because there are some people that just don't know what time they were born, and sometimes it's not on their birth certificate either.
Well, that's a deep understanding of how life is patterned. Because human design has to do with the patterns that you're born to in life, personality patterns. And so much is based on our time of birth, because that's where the planets were, and that's what activates our personality. And so if you don't know the exact time of birth, you can find it out through astrological rectification. And I learned what that is because my wife is an astrologer and she had to be certified. She had to learn how to rectify charts for people. In other words, how to find the exact time of birth. And it says a lot about life because what you do is you interview people about the main landmarks in their life.
Okay.
And then once you know the landmarks and an approximate day of birth can be just a day, can be within a few hours. You using astrology, you figure out with those landmarks in your life, you could only have been born at a particular second of time.
Fascinating. That's really neat. So people can figure out their time of birth if they don't have the information through.
Yes, and there are astrologers who do rectifications who are good at it. But what to me, what's important is that if all the important landmarks in your life can be recognized from the second that you were born, what does that say about your free will of creating those landmarks in your life? They're already there. They're already there from the moment of birth.
Yeah.
And the timing of it is already there. And so, we say, oh, I think I'll propose to my girlfriend and we'll get married, and it's all my free will that's creating that. But then you look at your chart and you were always going to get married at that moment in time that you did.
Yep. Absolutely. It's all so fascinating to me, and I find it so very interesting. With human design, you've been doing charts for quite some time. What is the most fascinating thing in the chart that you like to look at compared to like what's like the most popular things most people look at?
Well, one of the things that I like to look at are these 6 numbers that I was just talking about, that you're born to be a leader. And what I was getting to, but moved on to other subject matter, was that when I had all these classes and I wasn't a leader or a master, what was I? Well, I'm a number 6. And 6 is the number, it's called innocence. It's just being. So I only know how to be. I don't have an ego about it. I can't call myself, oh, I'm this master, or I'm this leader. I can't even identify with that. All I am grateful for is that people want to listen. And so,
good. I think
yeah.
it's good. I think
It's not easy.
Everyone in our life, different numbers.
But it's fairly rare to be a 6. And so when I meet other 6s, I'm so happy to tell them about themselves because they're also not understanding why they have these or lack these ego needs that other people have.
I think I always say it's all written in the stars. And so I think
also people don't know how to look at us because they expect us to be like them. And we're not.
No, and you can't be something.
In the early years, right. In the early years when I helped to found the New York City Marathon, there were a few other people there who had leadership. And I became an important leader at the time. I was one of the 4 directors or officers of the organization. And the 2 that were above me, the president and the vice president, looked at me as a threat because I was so popular and so excited about everything. They thought I was going to challenge them for leadership, but I'm not born to be a leader. So I was just happy doing what I was doing. And of course, many times in my life, I've become a leader only because I'm not born to join groups. I'm not a joiner. And so if I'm with groups, it's also in our human design that I'm born to be a shoreline person. That's my ideal location in life is the shoreline. So that also means with groups, I'll stay on the shore and watch. But I also, because of the abilities I have, many times I've been asked to lead, and I don't. It's not like I aspire to. I just want to do my best to help, and I'm not a good joiner, so I might as well be leading.
In that situation. That's cool. I like that because sometimes we got to rise to the occasion. Now, let's talk
Well,
about.
let me tell you about your ideal location,
Sounds good.
the marketplace.
Yes, mine's the marketplace. Tell me a little bit about that. I've had different interpretations, and so I'm curious to hear what your interpretation of it is.
Well, it has to do with wanting to be around a lot of people. Like you have a student body that you just cherish and they cherish you. And that's a marketplace. I hate to make it sound commercial, but it is. But it's also, it just shows that you're a kind of person who really needs to mix, to be with others, to get out and enjoy being in the world with other people.
I absolutely need it, and I also require my alone time as well. My husband's is a cave. That's his location, is the cave. So
Well, you have in one of your traits here, where is it? Because I looked at your traits in detail, and at Neptune in your chart is a trait called the hermit. When in isolation, aloneness enriches your mental functions. So what you just told me is in your chart. And people do that all. When I do chart readings, people say, well, let me tell you about myself. And I'll say, no, we'll get there because it already has that.
it naturally all unfolds, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. And you have a wonderful human design chart. I mean, I'm so impressed. It was so exciting to look at it and see the details. And you're truly who you're here to be.
Oh, thank you.
You're manifesting perfectly what you were born to.
Thank you.
But let's also talk about your cards.
Tell everybody what cards are so they know exactly what you mean by cards.
Love to. This is the 52 card deck. And it's something that I'm very indulgent with because it's always accurate. And it's extremely profound. This is the deck that cards we play, card games with. And yet it goes back thousands of years. It actually, the pips in it, or the, whatever, wherever the clubs or hearts or diamonds or spades sit on the card, is also where they sit in the tree of life. So that's how far back this goes. And it's amazing how profound it is. So the cards are really the structure of life. And it comes, I think, hundreds of years before tarot, because tarot are the stories of life. You can't have the stories of life unless you have the structure of life. So the 52 card deck, and just think about 52 weeks in the year, 52 cards, how many seasons there are, how many suits there are in the deck. It goes on and on how it resembles life. And what's exciting for you is that you're born to play the King of Diamonds according to your birth date. And the cards are always accurate. I've done thousands of card readings for people, and they're always obviously accurate. And the King of Diamonds, diamonds are the world around us, and the king is the authority. So you are an authority about life. It's a natural authority that you're designed for, and so it makes sense. And then your personality card, which is based on the ruling sign in your astrology, actually which is Mars. I think you know that, right?
think I did.
Yeah. And that's the two of diamonds. So, so not only are you an authority about life, the two is sharing. You're here to share all about life. So it makes total sense about who you are and what you're here for.
Yeah, that's not, I've never heard until I met you, Peter, about these card readings. I've heard, that tarot, um, the original tarot was always done with playing cards. And so I think it's so neat to see that is the tree of life, and that the tarot is the stories of life, which a funny fact is I have two big gigantic playing card pictures for art in my house, and we have two big gigantic tarot card pictures in my bedroom as well, because I'm like so attracted to both things. So I think it's really nice. I've never heard of that correlation before. So fascinating. So
Also, I want you to know that your Jupiter card, because we're born to a hand of cards.
yeah.
The cards I told you, were your birth card and the ruling card, which is your personality card, because that was your ruling sign. But your Jupiter card is the Jack of Spades. Jupiter is the card of expansion
Okay.
and growth, and you're born to play the Jack of Spades, and that's the Prince of Consciousness.
Wow.
Oh, what a surprise! It all fits so beautifully. Your life expands because of your level of consciousness.
It's so neat. So if anybody's ever interested, they can come and get a card reading from you or human design and take some different classes from you as well. Peter does all sorts of different stuff, which I find really fascinating. We have a lot of similar teachings and thoughts as well, which I think is really neat. So how do you, like, if someone's struggling, if they're struggling, what tool do you usually have the tendency to lean more towards?
Well, I'm also highly intuitive.
Yes.
So usually I'll call on my intuition and ask. And what I do this in my classes a lot. I'll have healing classes where for each student, I'll feel remotely feel their chakras and feel the quality of their chakras and see how that, where I see trouble in that. And I'll also scan these spheres of the tree of life on their body and see where those might be out of alignment. And then I'll get to understand the nature of the problem that way. And then I can go back in time. And what I do is if I find a weak chakra, I can go back and see where it got weak. It could have gotten weak in the womb. It could have gotten weak at birth. It could, any time as a teenager, wherever there was struggles in life is where our chakras get disturbed. And then according to which chakra and when it happened, then all of a sudden the stories appear to me about what happened in that person's life and what's going on and what their patterns are of struggle and how that needs help. And it's interesting because I do this in rapid fire in classes because I always call on every student in the class to whatever the topic is. And then I'll just tap into my intuition and carry on about what's saying. And I'll talk for a few minutes and then I'll look up and say, does any of this mean sense to you? Because I'm just hearing it from the universe. And they go, oh yeah, it's, because, I've been doing this for 29 years. So I trust myself, but also I'm always in wonder. It's like, I'm getting all this information. Oh my gosh. Then I'll say to the person, with all this information, what does it say to you? And and they, reliably agree with it. But it's always strange. It's strange to work from the universe because it's ungrounded. There's no proof of anything. You're just
Right.
hearing stuff. Like I said earlier, like I would hear scientific information and just talk to a scientist about it and not know what I'm talking about. And they go, "Oh, that's exactly what I needed." And so uh, I'm fascinated by intuition, by you know um, I know that how you see it in the terms you use have to do with the Akashic field, the Akashic records,
Yeah.
and I've always known those identifications, but I I'm not as succinct about it as you can be when you talk about the Akashic field and records. I just kind of talk about the universe, and
Mhm.
I know that there are all kinds of angels and archangels and guides, and it's amazing what comes through. Um, you want to hear an interesting story about what happened to me earlier this
Absolutely.
year? I was in Mexico and on vacation at a timeshare resort, and I slipped on the bathroom stone floor and crashed directly onto my face.
Oh,
And it was very bloody. The blood even had to be mopped up afterwards.
yikes.
But nothing was broken because I tap on wood, I'm blessed. And to crash on my face and to be able to have a good vacation after that, even though I was bandaged up, I, I was fine and I had a good time. But about 5 days later, I was still in the resort and I was getting out of bed in the morning, and a voice said, "Lie back down and be still."
Mhm.
And I've learned over the years to pay attention to voices.
Yes.
And because often, I mean, I'm hearing all the time, but there are times when there's a strident voice telling me what to do,
Mhm.
and I've learned to, through trial and error, to
Yeah.
obey. And because when I've resisted, I've paid the price for it. So, so I said okay, and I laid back down, and all of a sudden, my brain was shut down, and for about 15 minutes, I couldn't even have one thought except to be aware that I couldn't have a thought. And that was all.
Interesting.
And it was amazing to, but there were a couple of times earlier in my life where I was in similar situations where my brain was shut down for a period of time. And so I learned to try, I know to trust that. And so I'm lying there, and after about 15 minutes, the voice says, "Okay, we're done." And all of a sudden, my body went into full convulsions for a couple of minutes, which was wonderful. I mean, it was like an amusement park ride. Every muscle of my body was vibrating heavily, shaking. And, um, and then at the end, I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And the voice said, "Okay, when you slipped on the bathroom floor and fell on your face, we saw that you opened up some new channels in your third eye."
Okay.
And and this voice said that I think, I don't remember what they said, 3 or 4 light beings from the 12th dimension had seen this and had come to work on them. And that's why this was all happening.
That's amazing. And I know you've had quite a bit of visitations as
Right.
well. Do you want
Well,
to talk
yeah,
about that?
we can talk about it because I know your audience will appreciate it. I don't, most people can't understand what I'm talking about, but um, uh, about a year and a half ago, I had my first visitation from Inner Earth. and I'd been asking for a visitation because I want to visit inner Earth. There are 120 cities. There's a lot known about inner Earth through history, actually.
For anybody that doesn't know, can you give like just a brief description
Yeah,
of what
sure.
inner Earth is?
Well, there are cities. There's one under or down in the earth, but under Mount Shasta called Telos, and there are books about that. Also, uh, one of the Tibetan secret teachings is about Shambhala, and and then Madame Blavatsky, who was a famous spiritual teacher woman from 100 years ago and started the Theosophy School. She actually visited Shambhala and wrote a book about it. So, and Admiral Byrd visited Inner Earth, and that was the government shut down the information, but his family has been coming out with it, and so I wanted to visit, and I didn't know what that meant, and then all of a sudden, I was in bed, sitting in bed, or reclining, and my eyes were closed, and there was a whoosh over my head, whoosh, whoosh, and I opened my eyes, and it stopped. Then I closed my eyes, and whoosh, whoosh. I opened my eyes again, and then the bed started to vibrate heavily, and it was like, "What's going on?" And I asked. I said, "Is anybody here?" And there were three people from Inner Earth who were visiting astrally, a man, two men and a woman. And they started speaking with me telepathically, telling me that they had come to raise my frequencies so that I could visit because we had work to do together. And it was really about responsibility, not just being a tourist. and and so they needed me to have a higher frequency. And so that was nice. And I said, well, we'll see you again. And then the next day, I was dowsing for my consciousness level because you can do that. I've dowsed for yours. I've told you before, and you have a high consciousness frequency. And all of a sudden, mine was rising. And over the next several days, it rose almost to the top of the charts. And it was like,
Amazing.
what's going on here? And so I've become a real student of consciousness. And there are people, there's a company called Focus Life Force Energy out in British Columbia who will send a high frequency to your home 24/7. And they're at flfe.net, and I love them. And I've been a subscriber to them for many years. And so I'm working with them, managing this consciousness level that Inner Earth wants me to be at. And so I'm learning about what consciousness means. And it's on a scale of 1 to 1,000 based on a Hawkins scale. And he's the guy who wrote the book Power versus Force. And the lower numbers are where most people are at. The overall consciousness level of humanity right now is about 190.
Okay.
Scale of 1 to 1,000. Most good people are in the 400 range. You're up in the 500s, and some exceptional people are, and so it's important to understand what that means in life, to be at that higher level. And all consciousness levels have to do with this universal love. And so
Mhm.
the lower levels are struggle, or where there's hate and rage and envy and all the lower understandings of emotions and unhappiness. And as you get higher, you get much more comfortable loving and much more disciplined about living your life that way. And it's not about romantic love. It's about universal love. It's about oneness and harmony. And so for me, being at a higher level now isn't that I can walk through walls or levitate or anything like that. It's really that I just love loving. And like I live in New York City, every day when I'm out in the city, I'm always talking with strangers. I just love to um, be positive with people in ways that reinforce their happiness. And so it's on the subways. I'm always talking with strangers, complimenting them about different things, and making everybody as happy as I can, just being friendly and helpful and in wonder about people, no matter what it is, what they're wearing, how they're looking, how they're acting. I'll compliment them, and I just love doing that. And so I think that's part of what higher consciousness is about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the little things, because when we have those little things that we're doing, it one helps us raise the frequency of the planet, makes someone else feel good, and makes us feel good all in return. So it's just it's a multitude of a ripple effect that happens just by deciding that you're going to be loving today and you're going to be nice towards people today. And for me, oneness was something that I focused on for quite some time, just because I wanted to really understand what that was. Because when you can have tolerance for the people that get under your skin, it allows you to raise your frequency and assist them in just being who they are without having to create story around why they might be behaving. Because sometimes people just don't know better.
Well, because I look at human designs and I can tap into people's chakras and all, and
Yeah.
I can see that people are born to be the way they are.
Yeah.
And I've looked at the charts of many famous people because you can find their birth dates, times, and astrologers have looked at the astrology of many famous people, and I can find those charts and find their birth data, and then do a human design chart and see that yes, these are people who are born to have trouble, be in trouble. Human design is not a whitewash. You have this incredibly wonderful human design. I mean, granted, everybody has their shadows, but there are people whose human designs are terrible. My brother was married to a woman for quite a while whose human design was so bad, he and I decided not to show it to her because all it did was show what a terrible person she was. So so when you look, at so many famous people and read their charts, you can tell exactly what they're about as their bad stuff. Because human design is based on the I Ching, which is 64 hexagrams. Each hexagram has 6 lines. So it's 384 lines. Plus, you can have a positive aspect or a negative aspect to each line. And so there are over 1,000 possibilities of, of traits that you can be born to. And it's a full spectrum.
Yeah.
And so wherever your planets were at birth and whatever lines, and hexagrams you're born to represent you. and it could be a whole bunch of the bad ones. And guess what'll happen in your life? It'll be bad.
Mm.
And so, so I've learned so much about, looking at the charts of many of the villains of the world and seeing, um, what makes them, as some will have rejection of higher principles.
Yeah.
And it'll be very clear. Yes, these people are rejecting higher principles. And so it's fascinating when you get to learn the details of people's lives based on these personality traits that we're born to.
So do you think that people that do have some more challenging human design charts, are those the people that are usually seeking out chart readings, or are those the people that aren't usually seeking out that type of wisdom?
If it's that bad, they won't be looking because they're, on an unconscious level, they're not going to be asking for trouble. Um, so I generally, I've had chart readings with people who have troublesome lives, and when they see their chart, they go, "Thank God, I've been born to this trouble, so now I can deal with it."
Feels validating.
It's validating and also gives you purpose.
Mm,
There's no
yeah.
mistake, so let's get on with doing a better job. You can't change your chart, but you can do a better job of it. And so it's fascinating because there's so much detail. A chart reading can go 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
That much detail, and um, and every detail is accurate because I've done thousands, and people go, "Yeah, oh yeah, so far you're right. So far you're right." Right till the end of the reading, and it's it's fascinating. Um, so I love to do them because everybody's chart has a real theme to it because each person has a theme in their lives, and their
Hmm.
lives are very clear in the way who they're supposed to be. And we don't have to like it all. I have things in my chart that I don't like. I'm not happy with. I have, because in my chart, actually, I can see the underbelly of the beast. In other words, I can always see what's wrong.
Hmm.
And that helps me help people.
Yes.
So I'm fascinated by the ability to see what the problem is, but it shows up just in my everyday life where, oh my God, this could go wrong, that could go wrong, this could go wrong. But then it makes me better at living it because then you adjust for what could go wrong.
Right. There's always the flip side, right?
Yeah.
So
So
here,
I'm grateful for it, but it's like, my family doesn't want to hear about it from me, Let's,
are you a projector, or what are you?
I'm a generator.
A generator?
Um, yeah, and you are too. And
Yes.
and we're just here to stir the pot. And as generators, we're trying to be manifestors. We're trying to make life work by stirring our pot. And we throw everything we know into the pot, and hopefully the pot will produce good results for us. The problem is that we're not manifestors. We're not direct manifestors. We're indirect manifestors. So while we're stirring the pot, the universe goes to work. It says, "Oh, that's what you want, huh? All right, we'll figure it out. We'll give you good stuff in our way, in our timing, not necessarily."
Yes.
And so the secret is that life comes out of left field, even though we're stirring the pot thinking it should come out of our pot. But our pot is disappointing because it doesn't do as good a job as we expect because we're not manifestors. But it does manifest a result, but in the universe's way, not in
On its own timing.
right, not in our ego's purpose. So we have to learn to get out of our own way and let life come, but also provide intention, give the universe
Mhm.
good stuff to work with, and you never know when the phone rings or opportunities show up that are just amazing. And I love to watch it because I've known about this now for 22 years. So I've been watching it not only in my life, but in the life of so many people I know, and I know their designs, and I watch um, life show up the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. It's really neat for people that don't know. So we were just talking about generator. There's generator manifester, right? Projector. What's the other?
A manifesting generator, which is
Right.
like you and I, generators, but they have a definition in their throat chakra that gives them a powerful voice. So they can then be like, it's called the voice of God. They can manifest from what they say to create a result. But they first need to um, receive what comes out of left field. And then a generator and a manifesting generator, we have sounds. We have gut sounds of whether something is correct or not. It's not our mind saying yes or no, I like this or this is good or not. It's um, it's a gut and it's automatic. It's immediate. And when you have a response to something that is an up vibe or down vibe, you'll know if it's correct or not.
Right.
And then you can manifest from that if you're a manifesting generator. But you and I just have to keep on letting life reveal itself and go, and then follow through on that, but not with the same power as a manifesting generator. But it doesn't mean we can't be powerful. You have a very interesting chart. You're here to be a spiritual warrior. It's amazing. Can you put your chart up?
Pull it up. Let me pull that up.
Because it's amazing what it says about you. And we're talking about, this is the body graph. So on the left are the hexagrams of the I Ching and the particular lines of each hexagram you're born to. And then on the right side is a body graph. It's a chakra template. It has 9 centers rather than the normal 7 chakras. And I'll explain that. And so your chart is very interesting because the top 3 chakras are undefined, in other words, not colored in. The top 2, the very top one is the higher mind, and the triangle pointed down is the mundane mind. And they're both wide open. And the only little color you have there is the 61, and it's unconscious, but it's still in play, and it's the pressure of the mysteries. So anyone, I notice in my classes, a lot of my students have the 61, and that's why they're in class, because they want to understand the mysteries. And, a lot of profound spiritual teachers have the 61. I don't have it, but I'm wide open. And so when you're wide open, you're receiving a lot from the universe, from the Akashic field, whatever. It's all coming in because these white chakras have antennas all around, mirrors to pick up whatever is going on around, and then bring it all in. But when it's white, it has a little eraser in it and says, "Ask the next question." It kind of erases what you've been working on, so you can work on more and better and new and different. And so your higher mind is definitely geared towards the mysteries of the universe. And the lower mind is wide open. You're an original thinker. You're always needing to rethink and come up with new and better. I'm this way too. And so it's fun to be this way, but it's not normal. People who have this colored in, defined, are more rows and columns people.
Are more what people?
Rows and columns.
Oh, okay.
Because they want to establish clear order for everything. My wife has this defined, very defined, and so she's always making lists, and always everything has to be kind of clarified in writing, and when she studies things, she needs her certifications, and everything has to be in order. And you and I aren't like that. We're more inventors. We more use our imagination. And
Yes, I would definitely agree with that.
right. And your throat is undefined, and that just means that you're always wanting to know what you're talking about. Whereas mine is very defined. I'm just a verbal gunslinger, so I can just carry on and on and on. It's amazing. Each way is because, for instance, an undefined throat, because you want to be careful on how you express yourself and say things correctly. My younger son has an undefined throat, and he's an amazing salesman, and he's really now a big time sales manager in a big company, and it's because he has such a gift to know how to use his throat because he has studied it. Whereas I'm not good at selling anything, but I can talk a lot.
Ah, that's interesting because my previous job, that's what I did. I was in sales.
Yeah,
So
because you
I
know
sold
how to,
insurance.
right. Well, because you knew how to do it right. And so I want to come down to, well, the lower right is the solar plexus, the lower right triangle, solar plexus chakra. And that's feelings, and it's undefined. So you're not good in conflict.
No.
Right. It's uncomfortable for you to be in conflict. And it's difficult. My wife is designed like you. And so and my younger son also. And it's like their goal in life is to keep things chill. Let's just be chill. That's everybody.
Hmm.
And so, we can meditate or whatever, so we're chill. But it does, unfortunately, you do sweep too much under the carpet when you don't express yourself enough, and sometimes it can burst out
Yes.
in in anger, and you don't know where it came from because you're not happy with it because it's not something that you like. Whereas I'm very defined, and because of that, I'm always um, uh, up and down, up and down, up and down, high and low, hope and pain, hope and pain, and it's no fun to be always in feelings. And my wife says that I waste too much time in my feelings, and but I'm comfortable in them because I'm used to them.
Yeah.
It's white like this, you'd rather not be used to them.
Well, I
And
have to, I have to work hard at when there's a conflict that I have to make the space and time to talk about what's bothering me. Otherwise, I know it will come out in the most inopportune time. So if
I,
I nip it in the bud right away, it's better.
very
So,
smart, very smart. So we can come down to the little yellow diamond, and that's your identity, which is defined. You know yourself. The 1 is creativity. The 25 is a spiritual warrior. And the 10 is self-love. So to have those 3 traits, knowing yourself, is wonderful. And then the little red triangle is the ego, which is willpower, and it's defined through being a spiritual warrior, which is an excellent way to have an ego. And I always congratulate people who have defined egos because it means you know your ego and you can deal with it. When it's undefined, mine is undefined, and so I always think my ego doesn't serve me enough, and it doesn't in
mm,
ways, and it does, and in other ways, it's a great gift. So, but there's nothing in human design that's really wrong. It's just the way we're different.
I think it's information that we know how to, with that information, then we can work with it to
Yeah.
better ourselves.
Well, but I say nothing wrong. And here I've talked about people having terrible charts. And you could say that's wrong, but that's what their souls came here for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's only wrong from our viewpoint. To them, they just can't help being that way. They might not be happy being that way, but they have to be because their souls needed to grow in this life that way and chose.
Yeah. Have you
So,
seen anybody with all undefined or all defined?
yeah, so if it's all undefined, then it's the trait, the type of reflector, and those people are just total reflections of what's going on around them, and then they have to learn to work with what they're reflecting.
And the reflector is really rare, right?
It's 1.5% of the population.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've seen people with them all defined, and there are much fewer people with all defined than undefined. And when they have too much definition, often you'll have splits between them in ways that there are gaps. In other words, it's not all colored in between them, and those gaps create split definitions. And some people have triple split definitions, and those people are usually very anxious because they never feel like they have all their ducks in order. And yet they feel very smart about things, but uncomfortable that they just can't get it all together. One thing you have here that I really, well, you have so much that I really like, but one thing in particular I want to talk about right now is on the lower left is the spleen chakra, and that's the home of fear for survival. And you have the 57, which is being intuitive.
Okay.
It's actually called fear of the future. So, oh my gosh, if we need to know the future, we better be intuitive. So I have that too. But then it goes up to the 10, which is self-love. And actually, that channel between the 57 and 10 is called perfected form. And that means that you always need to look good. You need, and the world around you need to build the world around you to look good. And you need to, my younger son has this, and he's always so wonderfully dressed. And he always looks great. And he's this master salesman too, so looking good is important. But it's just wonderful to see. He's a Queen of Hearts, which means everybody loves him and he loves everybody. And he's also the King of Spades, which is total command. And recently, my wife was watching him at his house, being on the internet, working with his sales teams. And she was so impressed with his sense of command.
I love it. He can command a room.
Yes, and there's, because he wasn't the easiest teenager, et cetera, but now he's 37 and he's just, he amazes us how wonderful he is. And so you have this, and so it's really about, things need to look good for you to feel yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you look great, so they're accomplishing that.
Yeah, I like aesthetically pleasing things. I want everything to look nice and be nice, and
Exactly.
it doesn't have to be perfect. I have to feel like it's nice.
and you're born to that.
Yeah.
And then the 50 is principles and integrity. And since this is the chakra of fear for survival, then it means that if we don't have integrity and honesty and principles in our lives, we're all going to die. That's what it feels like to you.
Yeah.
And so it's so important to maintain that. And then the 27 in the it's in the second chakra. The red square is the second chakra, and that's the sacrum, which is your motor, That's why you're a generator, but it's also the sex chakra. And the 27 is the gate of caring. So you're, the way you are in life, including your sexuality, has to be very caring, caring person. Everything has to reflect caring. Not everybody has that. Actually, if it was on the other side, on the right side of the chart, it has to do with intimacy and passion, and it's not personal. So it doesn't have to do with caring as much as making babies.
Ah.
So, yeah, these charts, they really cover the ground. And then,
It's neat because for me, just even the numbers really speak to me. And 27 is a big number for me. And my husband will often make fun of me because I'll be like, I had to do like 27,000 things. Everything ends up being 27. So I like that that's the number for the caring. That's pretty neat.
also 27 is a 9, and 9 means to fill up. Nine's the top rung of the ladder. And so you're always filling up, taking in as much as you can. And so there's so much to talk about in the chart. I mean, at the bottom square is pressure to initiate. It's the first chakra, and that's where you initiate from. And the 38 is individuality. You initiate from being an individual and want to be recognized as an individual. And the 53 is starting new things. And it's good that you have that, because on the upper right, coming out of the throat, is the 35, and the 35 is getting bored. So the 35 is always looking for something, what's next. And you have the 53, which is the energy to start new things. So that takes care of that.
I do always like starting new things, lots of new things.
Right, right. And then you have in the red square, you have the 9, which is the ability to focus your attention very strongly. You have the 5, which is having fixed patterns in your life. You like to have a sense of when you're eating meals and when you go to bed, and just having order in your life. And then and that goes along with a perfect form too. And then the 14 is energy to work hard to accomplish your goals. 14 is really a hard-working energy. So, but I also wanted to talk briefly about your, there's a chart software that most people don't have, most chart readers don't have. And I seldom get into it because it has to do with spiritual purpose in life. And since you're a spiritual teacher, I thought I'd look at it and see what your spiritual purpose is in life. And these are based on a different looking kind of, it's the chart, but it doesn't have all the same numbers and et cetera. And it's from different moments of before and after you're born. So this one, what's your guiding spiritual purpose in life, is 6 days after you're born. And it's actually based on finding answers for people. And so your guiding spiritual purpose in life is to be very talented at tackling questions that need answers. And you're great at finding answers. And so it's wonderful to see that in your spiritual purpose. And so there are a bunch of different ones here, but the basic understanding is that you're here to be very talented and spiritual and have answers for people. So it's nice to know that what your spiritual purpose in life is.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. And there's so much in your chart. Your lines are so beautiful. So many of them are really higher consciousness traits to live with. And I've actually type them out. At some point, we can go over them. Would you tell me? Time. I don't want to go into all of them.
Yeah, I so appreciate you, Peter.
But I I always love to read charts and get to the bottom of things for people.
Yeah, and if you're interested, how can they find you to do a chart?
Well, I can be reached at my email address, which is peter@heartriver.org. My school is heartriver.org, or Heart River Center for Intuitive Healing, but their website is heartriver.org, HEART river.org. And so it's Peter at that. And then I have a weekly podcast that I've had for 19 years.
It's amazing
Actually,
that you've been on for 19 years.
But it wasn't called a podcast in those days, early days. It's called a radio show. And but it's still weekly. You've been a recent guest of mine on it's called Energy Stew. And people can go to energystew.podbean. That's STEW, energystew.podbean, like the beans of a pod.com. And they'll see years and years of shows that they can scroll through. And also, I have a YouTube channel that I don't promote that much, so it doesn't get as many views, but it has, because it's recent actually, and it has hundreds of old shows. Those are videos, and yours will be up there at some point soon. I have a guy who posts those every so often. I don't know what else.
I'll put all of your info in the show notes and then the show description. So if you're interested in getting a reading, a human design reading, a chart reading, or checking out one of Peter's classes, you can go to his website. I'll make sure that that is in the show notes and the show description. I love talking to you, Peter. I think it's always fascinating and interesting what you're doing, and you just give me lots of hope on what you're doing and where we can go when we get older as well, because I feel like I'm a forever student and I love talking to you. I know that you're going to be 82 soon, and it's like I talk to my grandma and she's 86, and it's just she finds all this stuff fascinating as well. And I think, as we get older, like we got to stay within the realms of the things that interest us and spark joy and brings curiosity and keeps us going and keeps us growing as well, which I think is so fascinating. So I just love that you're still doing this.
I have grandchildren who are pretty advanced consciousness kids, little ones. My 7-year-old, when she was 3.5, was telling me about a past lifetime of hers.
Love it.
And then at that time, her little sister was born, and she said, Grandpa, when my sister and I were still living out in the sky, we were friends, and we decided to come here and be sisters. And I mean that's amazing, and she knows that she can talk to me about it. The rest of the family won't appreciate her information, spiritual information. They'll just, it's because I'm built for this, and this is what I love, and so and I have a grandson who I know some of his past lives, and they were just incredible, and so I'm excited about him. He's almost 11 months old now, and so I love to use my intuition to look. Another thing I do, I do look at past lives of people. Very easily, I can go back and check out a past life, and yet what was interesting that there's a scientist who I just learned about who has some breakthrough new science, and I looked for his past lives. Where is he from? How come he knows so much? And I got that he didn't have well, at least I wasn't shown past lives. I was only being told that he's from the future. So that was kind of fascinating.
I got
And
goosebumps on that one. I haven't seen that yet. That's neat. I've seen all sorts of different things, but I haven't seen that one. And like I've seen people that haven't had any human lives before, where they've had other previous lives, but no humans, and this is the first time they've been.
yeah, and I get that. I've gotten that for so many years that people have had lifetimes in other planets, and
Yeah.
and it was really weird because I didn't know anything about that, and I was getting all this information, and then I found Linda Bachman wrote a book. She's this person who has regressed thousands of people back into previous lives and in between lives, and of those thousands, some hundreds would go back into lifetimes on other planets. And when I read that book and interviewed her on my show, it all became real to me that yes, all this information I've been getting about people in past lives on other planets was, was true.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
You can't make it up. It's
no,
so fascinating.
right, because it was coming in such detail to me. I just said, but this is crazy, but I had to accept seeing and hearing and speaking the details of what I was getting of these lifetimes, and they were very interesting. The different kinds of planets people were from, and etc. It's so much fun to do that, and I do a lot of that. I'm doing that in 2 nights from now. I'm actually at in the neighborhood. There's a store called My Little Magic Shop, and they've asked me to come in and teach a class on past lives. So I'll be looking at the past lives of all the people who show up, and I just love to do that.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate being on. I know I could talk to you for another hour if, if I could, but I really appreciate you, Peter.
Likewise, it's so important, I think, that we know each other and can be there for each other. I'm so happy about that.
Ditto, my friend. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're interested in getting a chart reading or a card reading or any other service from Peter, go check out the show notes or the description. And we can't wait to see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.